Hello, my name is Dinis Guarda, and welcome to my YouTube podcast series powered by citiesabc.com, our wiki platform. I'm here to talk about ideas and the biggest solutions and the problems humanity is facing, and as well to profile global thought leaders, influencers, and inspiring people and experts, people shaping and creating new narratives and solutions for our world, society, and business. These podcasts and videos are part of citiesabc.com. That is a platform that I created that has been looking at the challenge that we're facing right now, specifically with COVID-19, but as well with Society 5.0, 4AR, blockchain, and a lot of other different technologies that are changing the way we see society, but as well opening new possibilities and challenges. Today we have someone very special, Indiana Gregg. She's quite a unique, inspiring lady, and we're going to be talking about her career, about her experience, and her profile. I want to start with a quote from Plato that I think is interesting for Indiana. That is, music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. And I think this is particularly interesting for Indiana. So I think just as a small introduction, Indiana has been a music star. She built Kerchoonz. I always spell it wrong, but she'll do it right. Businesswoman, and as well been working UI UX and a lot of different things, from being as well a mother, but as well a very inspiring and 360-degree lady in a lot of different ways. Welcome to our podcast, Indiana. Pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. Nice to see you, Dinis. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so I would like to start by the basis. Okay, someone like you that came from Scotland and is right now around the world, and as we speak, based in about your background, education, and how you come up to the music industry. But before that, how a bit of your education and as well the cultural background.
Yeah, well, I was born in the United States, and I was raised and went to university in the U.S. From a very early age, I had a speech impediment, so one of the things that my mother did was put me in a piano class. And when I got to be around age 7, one of my teachers recognized that I had a problem with my speech. And I talked out of the side of my mouth, and so I was brought to an orthophonist who basically worked with me for 5 years. And one of the things the speech therapist did was ask me to write songs, and I had to write a lot of songs that had a lot of S's sounds in them and CH sounds in them. You know, this was a problem for me. And so music became kind of a way for me to express myself when I couldn't express myself in oral language as easily. So singing became kind of second nature and became kind of the way I express my emotions. And that's basically how I got started in terms of singing and performance and writing songs and working with other musicians. And of course, when you're a teenager, that's fun. You have bands, and you improve on your gifts or on your skills. My mother was also an art teacher, so she taught dance. So I had a pretty eclectic musical, dance, and artistic background just through growing up. We grew up in the Midwest, so I was from a lower middle class family. I lived in the countryside. There wasn't a lot to do, so music was a release that way as well. And I guess it's kind of part of the heritage of the community. So there's a lot of country singers, a lot of country music, a lot of banjo players, and a lot of different influences from jazz all the way through to heavy metal and rock in that particular area of the world. And then after I left university, I moved to the south of France and worked and lived there for a while and got involved playing with bands. And that kind of kicked off my music career. My kids were born there. And at one point, my husband left the family. He had an affair with somebody he fell in love with. And I just decided, well, you've got 3 young kids, why not become a rock star, So I looked for a record deal, and, I kept on going until I got one. And that's really, how I got involved in the music industry on a more professional, proper level, and I was put into, my record label sent me to Scotland to work with Ian, and the rest of that is history. That's how, I ended up releasing the album and doing tours and working, and yeah, that's my background pretty much.
Oh, that's fantastic. One of your challenge became as well your lifestyle and opportunity. That's quite inspiring as well. So I think when you start your music career was okay when the music industry was going through a big challenge from becoming offline to online, and as well all the revolution that killed part of the institution that exists. I went through that as well in a different way. I remember that I launched my first music label, and seeing my music being completely for free when I had spent a lot of money to produce the first album. So I understand how challenging it is. So can you tell us about that part? Because that was partly, well, the part of when you start really making your business and music career at the same time, but as well going through all the challenges, because it was in a time that things were going very fast. Now, of course, things are more clear, but during those years, the music industry went through huge disruption, and they're still going, but now at least people know what they can count.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'd just gone through the birth of the MP3 in the early 2000s, and that was a big kind of crisis for the music industry because, if you could put an MP3 on the internet, that meant it was downloadable, and it was very impossible to stop people from doing that. But there were no alternatives. And at the time, even iTunes hadn't been launched in the UK or in Europe at all. iTunes was a fledgling idea, and Apple hadn't done that yet. MySpace had just launched as one of the early social networks after Friendster. And it was one of the first times that music was being streamed on the internet rather than just downloaded. But there was no kind of royalty or way for a musician to be paid via that mechanism. So a lot of artists were spending a lot of time, money, and effort building up their fan bases on MySpace, but not getting any return from it because music was essentially free. And that made it really difficult. So at that point, I was just working on my album. I had gotten kind of a development deal, and we started putting together with a friend of mine who was a technologist like yourself, a social the ground base for like a social network that would pay artists for their streams and for their downloads. And so we started kind of laying the foundation for that. And one of my friends said, look, why don't you talk to these people? They might be able to help you raise investment for this idea. And so we raised some money. And part of that was through Scottish Enterprise and with an angel fund. And we started working on really developing the concept in a bigger way. And it got to the point where we released the album and things were going pretty funny. It was, I think by 2006 or 2007, we'd already launched, this idea. We hadn't really given it a name. And one night, we were writing takedown notices about the album, and we got in kind of a fight with Peter Sunday from the Pirate Bay. And we were like, look, this isn't fair. This isn't cool. Musicians are getting kind of ripped off. We really need to push this a little bit harder. So we went and raised a little bit more money, and we launched Kerchoonz, which was the first social network that paid artists for streams and downloads, a royalty based on the advertising revenue and a subscription model. And they could also sell their goods and services and whatnot, their gear and their, so it was basically one of the first music marketplaces that attracted, musicians and labels. And then we started flying all over the world, trying to talk the music industry into this idea. And of course, the music industry was holding on to their old model. It made it really difficult to make a lot of progress because they wanted extortionate amounts of money for their catalogs. But they were kind of on, Woolworths was just shutting down, all the shops, HMV, Virgin, mega stores, all these shops were shutting down, and physical CDs were becoming very obsolete. But they didn't necessarily see the stream as a way forward. They saw it really primarily as a download. They believed that in the future, everyone would be downloading their music, and everybody would want to keep a physical download of that music on their computer devices. And so, I was kind of walking into the heads of Universal and Sony saying, no, they won't. No, they won't. Nobody is going to be able to store their entire music, and they're not going to want to. And eventually this is going to be on, your phone or on your computer, and streaming was going to be the way forward. And so, a year or so went past, and broadband got a little bit better, and people's mobile phone networks got more into the 3G area, at that point. And they started to recognize the model. So we started picking up more and more labels, and we grew it to a really big, there were millions of people on that. I can't remember how many we ended up with, but it was well over 10, 12 million, maybe more than that. And we were surpassed by a couple other big firms that were big investment firms who invested in somebody who had similar ideas. And so we ended up selling, and we kind of already created that footprint of what the model was going to be for the future at that point. So I guess we kind of changed the world that way, which was kind of cool.
No, it's very impressive, and it's still impressive nowadays, because at the time there was mostly MySpace, as you mentioned, and then the rest was like a desert, and everyone trying to do things. So I would like to touch. So I know that probably was a very positive experience, because reaching 10, 12 million users, which were the numbers that are more or less public, is quite impressive, to say less. So how did it go, and why did you? So the platform ran from 2008. It was bought out in 2010. So can you tell us a bit about that experience as well? You being a musician, but then running a big social network, and at the same time, you suddenly became probably a businesswoman. So there's a lot of challenge that I think is interesting for potential music personalities that are listening to our podcast and videos.
Yeah, I mean, the platform ran a lot longer than those 2 years. We started building it, I think, at around 2004. And we went live a lot earlier than that. But we didn't do it like a real public launch probably till about 2006, where we were on television and radio and doing interviews all over, and, things like that. We were a lot more live forward facing at that point. So it was a longer process than what most people maybe realized, in terms of raising investment and getting that leverage and getting those labels involved. And, it was a lot of work. But for me, it was like, okay, I can be an artist in my free time, but the rest of the time I'm going to work on this project, because I felt like at that point in my life, I felt like this is something that I could do that could help change the world, or at least positively impact, a big amount of people, and hopefully solve a problem, and that's kind of what I had, the way I looked at it, and because it was music, my kids were involved. They were young, but they were really involved in it and really enjoyed it. It was a social network. So, they could create their own profiles like they were doing on MySpace, and they could do their own little HTML backgrounds and create their own, space on there and go listen to music. And so it was like, again, I was working, even though I was a musician, when I wasn't out playing live, I was working from home. The studio was in the house. The musicians came to the house. We had plenty of space in the house. And so I didn't feel like work. I felt like I was just doing something fun. And that, I think, I think that's kind of part of like what motivates creative people. If you're going to do something you really are enjoying. And that's always kind of been part of my, well, not kind of, it's always been my ethos, as a human being, to do things I enjoy, so because I put more of my heart into them when I do enjoy them. So yeah, I'm probably a lot of an all or nothing type person in that respect.
But it's very impressive, because you had first of all, very strong audience, because 11 million people, it's massive. And I would like to know, how do you build that? I think it's interesting, even for now. And then second, you had as well very strong backup, because you had Ingenious Venture Capital, that is the producers of Avatar and Life of Pi, and you have as well Scottish Enterprise. So that's quite impressive. And as well, so there was a huge component of not only building a music and digital community, but as well of funding, which is a very big task. So if you, I don't know if you want to highlight a bit of that, because I think I always like to know the details, and as well, especially for achievements like that, and as well, the challenge that I'm sure you went through.
Well, I think for us, that it's always about solving a problem for people. When in terms of business, when there is a problem that people recognize and you have a simple solution, it makes raising funds a lot easier. And then the upside of what the business can produce and how an investor can exit, or what the possibilities are. The way you go to market and marketing expertise. We partnered with, we bought media time. We were doing radio, TV. We had a PR company that we hired and worked very closely with. A lot of things with that were made easier because I'm a graphic artist, so I could create a lot of the advertising and video and whatnot, which saved on costs and gave me something creative as an outlet to work on too within the company, besides talking to people and negotiating. So again, it was a creative outlet. A lot of our advertising campaign was really just retargeting people within the same physical areas where we had just done maybe a television morning show or an interview. And we were new and innovative. We were doing something no one else was doing yet. So that made us newsworthy in a way, if that makes sense. It made us special. And it's a lot easier when you come to the market with something that's unique or different and actually solves a problem. The main thing is solving the problem and having a simple solution. The second thing is being innovative and telling your story authentically. And the third thing is actually providing a product that's awesome. And if you get those three things right, there's a good chance that you'll, at least have some success and people will want to get involved. And the problem was pretty big. I mean, musicians were getting ripped off, and people wanted to help musicians at least get a fair shake at the time. So it just seemed like a natural thing. I mean, we thought we might be changing the world a little bit. We weren't sure how far we were going to get with it, but the idea was to get the point across that this needed to be addressed. And I think when you see something that's unjust in life, you want to kind of fix it. Well, I do anyway. So.
Yeah, that shows. I have two parts of that. So in one end, so it was a massive task, like you said, to solve a big problem. There was the music industry, which is still broken, but it's a bit better right now. And as well, I think it shows your social conscious focus on creativity and as well entrepreneurship. So let's say if you look at that experience and as well at the same time you're running your career as a musician, which is not a simple task because you are still singing and playing and a lot of different things. So and as well mother of children, so it's not as simple. I think it's quite interesting because a lot of people tend to complain a lot and I think everyone tries to, okay, yeah, my life is complicated, but sometimes they don't understand that people that succeed and do fantastic things like what you did are going through a lot of challenges as well. So I don't know if you want to touch that part, and as well, that I'm sure that through that process, that's when you became as well more into the areas of creativity in the sense, not just music, but as well in terms of design, in terms of creativity and imagination. I don't know if you want to highlight some of these areas, because I think that's quite interesting for our audience. And as well, I'm particularly interested to listen to that experience.
Well, I mean, for me, I had 3 children, but I have 3 children who weren't too difficult to deal with. I mean, my day life was, my son would pack the kids' breakfast and to go to school. They'd pack their snack and everything and send them to school. They walked up the road about 2 blocks to the school, and then they were at school for the day and came home for lunch maybe, So I had my whole morning and my whole afternoon like a lot of mothers did. One thing I probably did a little less of was cleaning, and I probably didn't do my best cooking during those years, because it was kind of like, okay, let's hurry up and make something that, something nice, but let's do it quick. But like I said, because I chose something that my children were also interested in, and because it was a time in their life when, social media was a new thing and they were young, it meant that I could be sitting next to them and they could actually be involved in what I was doing anyway. Aside from like helping them with their homework or whatnot. So that part of my life didn't feel very stressful at all. And I'm a very, I wouldn't say introverted, but yeah, I am. I'm quite introverted. So for me to sit home and focus and miss out on everything else anyone else was doing, like I don't watch TV. I very rarely go see a film unless it's recommended to me. I might go out to dinner once a week or whatever. So I was really focusing 100% of my time on that I didn't have, like that I had outside of my family life, on the mission, and I think that laser focus helps people get liftoff. And a lot of people aren't prepared to give that much of themselves, even if it's over a relatively short period of their life. For me, that was important to do. And I don't do that for every project. I don't give up 100% of my time or my life or my free time for every project. But every once in a while, ideas come along where I go, "Ooh, this is the one. I want to work on this." And at that point in my life, it was music. And music was very dear to me. So it was important for many reasons. It was solving problems and helping people. It was giving the music industry a push in a way too. To show them, hey, if we can do this, you can do this too. Come on, guys, get on board with the future. And I don't know, it probably was a struggle at a time. It's just at the time, I just probably don't remember it being that, because I tend to only keep the good memories when I can. So.
Yeah, but I would say that is quite impressive, and actually I have to take the hat because, first of all, being a mother of 3 children is not easy, and as well being a single mother, which you are at the same time, which is really more. And I think, for instance, I've been working with a lot of music stars and music industry, and especially at the stage. And as well, one of the things that I'm particularly interested in looking at your experience, that in 2007, when your career took over partly, you were as well doing a lot of home concerts. And that's quite interesting because now we have the Instagram concerts and the YouTube lives. So we are actually repeating something that was almost 14 years ago. So I think, do you want to give a bit of just insights for now? Because it's interesting to see that things repeat itself, mostly because between different channels, but as well you're doing things. For instance, right now there's a lot of artists doing performance from home because of course they cannot travel because of quarantine, and there's this part of the home performance and home concert that you're doing in 2007 when it was not still mainstream. It's quite interesting. Just I don't know if you want to, especially with all the things, because you're running as well the model and there's all the platforms. So I don't know if you want to just touch that area a bit.
Yeah, so we decided to launch home concerts and let people on like MySpace and YouTube apply to get a home concert, and we drew them out of a hat, and we go, and I think one of them was a wedding. Somebody wanted us to come to their wedding and they won. So we flew all the way to some town, I think it was called Lenzie, and we did quite a few of them, a lot actually throughout the whole year. But it was kind of the idea that as a musician, when you're on stage and you're playing to a bigger, larger audience, you don't have the same intimacy that you have when you play one-on-one or to smaller groups. And it gave those people the opportunity to have their friends and their family around and actually meet with people one-on-one in a more intimate way, without being pretentious, I guess. Without like saying, oh, this is this exclusive, thing that you special people get to come to. And for me, that's important because music is very much a cultural thing that you exchange in a human to human sort of way, and being close and upfront with, say, 20 people in their house. How more intimate can you be, that the artist comes to you rather than, And I think that right now with the home concerts online, with what musicians are doing, it's very similar concept that you have that kind of close empathy, interaction with with your audience. Unfortunately, right now, like with Facebook Live, you can't have all 200 people or 1,000 people, on the screen where you can see into their life, and it's not necessarily a two-way call like on Zoom or like what we're having right now. I can see you, you can see me, but it's still kind of trying to create that intimate approach where at least your fan sees you from the inside, from your home and what you're doing, and you can express yourself and how you're feeling. And I think maybe society needs a little bit more of that.
Now it's more important than ever. And I like a lot your passion for social impact, and as well trying to take this, but as well on lifestyle as well, because I think we have a big problem with lifestyle right now is that we have like big corporations and people trying to build the brands, but I think it past 15 years, but people are still struggling. And I think probably more than ever, because I think the quantity of unemployment and things like that are happening are really crazy. So I want to touch one thing more about the experience that you had in the music industry. So you were as well, you had a lot of, first of all, your own concerts had a lot of impact in the media. You were in mainstream media worldwide, but as well, you went and you fought against Pirate Bay. So I would like to hear that part, because that's it's quite impressive as well, because Pirate Bay at the time was really the biggest you can touch in a lot of areas.
Well, I mean, they made me angry, and it wasn't because of what they were doing on the sense of peer-to-peer or the technology. It made me angry, their attitude towards the artists, that they had this attitude that all artists were part of this big shill music industry that had been ripping them off for years and years and years. And that kind of really ticked me off. So from my point of view, I was like, hang on a minute, this isn't right. Musicians struggle. Musicians got to pay for their guitar streams, for the gas in the van, for their instruments. Sometimes they're paying to play. They're renting the hall. They're going through years and years of honing their craft. And by the time you get to the point where you're good enough that people actually want to hear you, and you've developed your craft to that point, and you've gotten a group around you, and you've actually brought yourself to a certain spot in your career, for people just to actually laugh at that and say, oh, well, by the way, we should just get this for free, and we don't really care about you. It's your music industry that has done this to you. Hang on a minute. The music industry is a bunch of people who work pretty darn hard, who invest a lot of their time, effort, and money into creating wonderful music that the world loves. And for that, by exchange, it's the same as you wanting to be paid for the job or the time you spent for your work. And I just thought, I'm sorry, Mr. Sunday, you're wrong. This is wrong. You've got to change your attitude. Use that technology to actually create a safe space for the very thing you love, which is music, or which is films, or which is whatever of that creative, that's being shared for free on the internet, And so it was really important to find that resolve. And at the time, I didn't really think about how big the Pirate Bay is. I didn't care. I was going to let them know how I felt. And it was important that, somebody was speaking up for the musician, and not, out of a position of greed or whatever. It was literally, look, guys, this is wrong, and somebody's got to fix this, And I mean, I think the Pirate Bay learned a little bit of a lesson themselves. I mean, they went through quite a few things after that. We did a lot of lobbying government, and phoning and calling and writing emails and getting other musicians involved and getting the music industry involved. And it was all about, let's solve this problem, guys, because, it's getting crazy. And I think to an extent it's worked. That evolution is sort of taken place. It's not fully resolved. Of course, there is a lot of art and music being shared and exchanged for free, but it's gotten a lot better. And that was the goal. So, yeah.
No, that's we have to be grateful for that work, because it's really impressive. And I think your social network platform was definitely one of the first ones that opened way for platforms like Tidal first, that was acquired as well and partly disappeared, but Spotify, and as well what we have today in the music industry, which is a bit of a bridge between the different things. So there's a lot of things still to do, but there was definitely a breakthrough in a lot of ways, and kudos for that. So I think the second one of the areas that I want to talk right now is about your career as a business woman. So you've been global managing director for Cosmetic Collaborative of Europe and a lot of other things. So if you want to touch a bit that part from the music, then you probably left a bit music. Are you still there? So just give us a bit of the overview after that bridge between building a global platform and that.
Well, after Kerchoonz, I was like, well, what do I want to do next? And I started looking into product development and working on products specifically. And so I was kind of interested in finding out a little bit more on what it would take to create a beauty brand. So we created a couple of cosmetic brands and we launched them. And around the fall of, I think it was around 2008, the whole financial crisis happened. And so here I thought, well, what is the opportunity to sell something that people want to buy, but it's too expensive to do? And so I thought, well, women like to get their nails done, but it's going to be really expensive to go get your nails done. Why don't I try creating a system, an at-home system, an at-home beauty system for your nails? So we launched Groove, Ultralac, and at the time, this thing called Groupon was available. So it was just coming to be popular because of probably the recession. And so I phoned up a guy at Groupon France, and they said, yeah, we want 2,000 kits, which was like 60,000, I think, articles, pieces in each kit. And I didn't even have the kits yet. And so we sort of held a gun to the head of one of our investors and said, hey, give us $100,000 so we can start this, because we just got an order from Groupon France. And basically for a few years, Cosmetic Lab and Groove was primarily sold on Groupon due to the recession. And we launched that whole business through that. And that company lasted a really long time we stayed with it we only stopped trading with Groove, a couple of years ago, and it's still online. We still sell, but we only stopped really doing mass orders and things like that a couple of years ago. And in the meanwhile, I was working primarily as a contract services person, like if you needed a CMO, I'd come and help you out. If you needed an operations person, I'd come help you out. If you needed an interface design, I'd come help you out. So over those past 10 years, I've been doing wearing a lot of different hats, I guess. It's kind of hard to explain. I don't know how I end up getting involved in some of the things I do, but I've spent a lot of time being involved in quite a few businesses over the last 10 years since Kerchoonz happened, and running my own bread and butter business basically through the cosmetics industry. So something I knew absolutely nothing about. I was just interested in it, and I thought, well, I can find out everything there possibly is to know about that, and that's what I focused on for a while to get that started. So I'm a little bit of an entrepreneurial, creative type of person, I think. And I like making people happy, and I like solving a problem when it's the right time to solve it, if that makes sense. So
no, very interesting. So I want to touch that. So I think this is particularly inspiring right now, and we have a huge challenge worldwide right now. And I know that it's very dear for you, social impact, and as well the things that can actually create more justice and more empowerment. So I think, how do you see right now? Because you mentioned that you started your business during the last recession, and now we are probably going through something even more alarming and more disrupting. Because in one end is health. No one can move. At least during the last recession, everyone could move and do whatever we want. Now we are all more or less working from home. We have to have a digital part to survive, but very few people are digital. Everyone spends time on Facebook and social networks, but ironically, very small people know how to do business online. So Can you tell us a bit about that, and what would be the message that you pass to people with COVID-19 and facing, there's 40 million people unemployed in the US, and it's your country, but as well in Europe, things are really becoming very dramatic. For instance, in the UK, 1 in 7 people are furloughed. So we have a lot of challenge right now. So how do you see that? And as well, you've been as well reinventing yourself. So that's a very important thing as well for everyone right now.
I think in terms of unemployment, if you're thinking about starting business, really take a little bit of time to, for people listening, obviously not for yourself, because I know you have a ton of experience in this, Dinis, but in general, I always feel like you really need to assess your skill set when you start a business. If you don't have certain skills, find the right partners who will go into business with you who have those skills, and form a team. Don't try to go do everything by yourself. You'll be overwhelmed. It will stress you out, and you can end up, losing money and your mental health as a result. So one of the first things that's important is, if you're not already an entrepreneur and you're leaving maybe a workforce situation as an employee and you're trying to start your own business, really assess your skill set and really try to work out what your idea is going to do that helps other people. How crowded is this market? What do you have to offer that solves a problem for your potential customer or your potential client? And where is your network already? So if it's a small business, who are you going to sell this product or service to? If it's a bigger idea, work out who can help you help your business, and what stake will they hold in the business, and play fair, and online or offline, the concept is pretty much the same. It's the idea, the problem you solve, who you solve it for, why folks need this, and how is it going to generate an income for yourself and for the other people within your business, or for your investors or whatnot, and that sounds really cliche, but that's, for me, the basis of business. And then trying to find the magic sauce. What's your secret sauce? What do you do better than anyone else? What do you do that's innovative above other people's stuff? Who are your competitors, and how are you going to mitigate the circumstances so that you are the one that people go to first? And how do you market yourself or your business or your skill or whatever you're marketing? How do you go about that? And give yourself a little bit of time. Don't be in too big of a hurry before you get started. Start with something. Try to make sure your product's good before you go to market.
No, that's very important, and actually very inspiring as well. And I think it's really important because I speak with a lot of people, and of course, I think both of us are entrepreneurs by nature, but a lot of people are not. And I think this is a big challenge that education and our schools and universities are not preparing people for. And I think you touch a very important thing, the importance of us looking at our strengths, but as well understanding how to use this digital and how to create a business out of that. Because a lot of people have fantastic talent, and they are super. If you are in Spain, and Spain is one of the biggest youth unemployment in the world, so it's actually very scary at the same time. So, and I think if you look at probably the next 10, 20 years, this is going to be even more incredible, necessary, and urgent, all of these things. So I want to touch, so you as well, during this process, you became as well a creative, and as well a person very focused in product design and UI UX. So can you tell us a bit about that? Because it's an interesting point, and it's another vertical of your expertise as well.
Well, I think, with the advent of the internet, I think no matter what company, whether your company is brick and mortar or it's a purely technical or internet facing, internet or mobile company, you still need certain things. You need your brand, you need your brand consistency, you need a story that's easy to tell, that communicates across the page, in your call to action, and you need an interface that makes people want to engage with you. So for me, working on interface and user experience design and UI UX for both mobile and for the web, just became second nature. It's like, well, people need this, so I better learn how to do this really well. And so I got involved with a few companies I was contracted to do work with very in the early days when apps were first coming out, and just started designing app interfaces. I'd already been working, you know, before you had Adobe XD and before you had Sketch and all these wonderful tools that you have now. You know, most people did things in Illustrator or Photoshop. And, you know, it was artboards that you exported, and that would be, you know, put in as HTML into either a web interface, or in the early days into, you know, the iOS stores. So that's how I got involved in that. I think it's just because I started out years and years ago designing records, you know, designing album covers and that the natural progression of that to web, when people started having websites in the early, well, the late 1990s, early 2000s, you know, that was a natural, it was like, this is something I can do. I can build websites, so therefore I can sell this to people, and I can make extra money or help my friends or create my own websites because I'm a musician. And it's kind of a natural, I don't know, you know what it really is. I feel like musicians take a stab at things because you're always dealing with technology in music. You're always dealing with, you always have to be everything in the band, or someone in the band has to do everything. Kind of, you know, you had to create flyers, get them printed. You had to build your website. You had to learn the new MIDI interface or whatever it was, you know. And I think programming and yeah, design work is kind of a natural thing that a lot of musicians kind of have to learn by default. And when you start your company, it's a great asset to have, to be able to create those first designs and build that brand. Yeah, that's really all, I think. Yeah, that's why.
No, that's it's wonderful. So I think so, and to wrap up, we are close to 1 hour. So in terms of the what are you present doing, and what are your future goals? As I know that you have some cards to come on the table, and probably will be a second interview. But just to understand, I think for the people that have been accompanying your career, understand what are your main focus at the moment. I know that you've been working on a sports project and a lot of other things that are coming, but just to understand what you're doing right now and what's your goal.
Well, right now I have a secret sauce that I don't want to tell you about at the moment, but we're well underway with a product that can help change people's lives. The core of that, the idea is based around human communication, and especially the situation with COVID-19, and can actually help people become more pandemic proof, if you will, so that, you know, your lifestyle doesn't have to change quite so much in case of the next lockdown, for example. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, that's where we're on our way to doing.
No, wonderful. I'm looking forward, and I'm sure it will be something fantastic. So as a last probably one or two last questions. So from your experience and where you are right now, and I think you reinvent yourself, but like you said, it's been a continuation, because as a musician, as an artist, as an entrepreneur, as a woman, as a mother, and as well a inventor in a lot of different things that you've been doing, and especially what you did with your music platform is really impressive. So what would be the advice you have for young people? And I know that you have children, but what is kind of the most important things? You touch some things like the brand and the capacity to adapt, but what would be these last inspiring words that you have for everyone listening to you?
Well, I think when you start something, pursue it and don't give up, but make sure it's something you want to pursue in the first place. Give it some thought and consideration. Make sure that you learn constantly throughout your life, whether it's a new program or it's a new ideas, a new, you know, a new market, whatever it is. Continue that learning and development of yourself over time, because I think that allows you to become a chameleon, if you have to be, to move into new technologies and new spaces and grow with society as it grows into, this new era that we have of the Internet of Things or mobile phone technology. The more you learn now and you progress with the times, the easier it is for you to create and become that next big thing that you want to be. And it is like a lot of growing pains, and nothing like works instantly the first time you've tried it. All my businesses haven't been successful. Some of them flopped, some of them went great, some of them haven't. All of the businesses I've worked with haven't been, the biggest ever companies on the planet. They had some success, others were super successful. So just don't worry about it. Learn and continue learning, because you're generally always at the right place, at the right time, with the right people, at the right moment in your life for you to learn something and overcome it or get better at it or achieve it. So don't be too hard on yourself, and keep it on. That's the main thing.
Well, that's very inspiring, and I love that, because chameleon, I love David Bowie. It comes back to that, but as well in the sense of adapt and the sense of education is key, and keep on learning. And I think you are a proof of that, and it's quite inspiring, because you come from being an artist and musician to build a social network, and then building apps and websites, and now as well keep on pushing a lot of new things. So last thing, where people can find you right now, where they can engage with you. I know that you're still very digital friendly, but I'm sure that now you are less on the music side, but and as well, are you doing still some music? So probably the last notes for the interview.
Yeah, I do still do music, and I'm still working with musicians, and we still write songs. For me, music is an emotional connection, so it would be very, very hard for me to live without it in any case. But when I have something to say, I will say it. When I'm ready, I will go out there and make another album, I'm sure. That's not something that's left me. But in terms of like where people can find me, well, I'm all over the internet. If you type in Deanna Gregg, you can find me somewhere, I'm sure. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, places like that. But LinkedIn. But I'm a low key person, and I enjoy people, and I enjoy I enjoy my privacy as well. So it's a balance, with what you do and how much you put yourself forward. But anybody who wants to get in touch, feel free, or they can contact you and you can give them my details. How's that, Dinis?
No, I'll put your social networks. I think it's better. Nobody, of course. No, you're the star. Okay, no, thank you so much. It's been a huge pleasure, and as well, I think a lot of insights. We'll put all these notes and some of your quotes in the interview. This will be distributed all over the internet. But thank you so much, Indiana. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you, Appreciate it. Thank you.